Good afternoon. All awake after our lovely lunch? Hi, so my name's Jamie Kelly. I'm the Programme Manager for Volker Rail's light rail business. And I need to say I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable today because in a room full of heavy rail experts, I'm a light rail bluffer. So as a Programme Manager, please be gentle with me. If you've got a question, send a TQ and I'll respond to it within the contract recognised timescales. So today I'd like to talk about the evolution of light rail S&C in the UK in particular. So we've got a little introduction there. So not sure if everybody's familiar with the context of light rail in our history in the UK, so we'll give a little bit of context around that. We're going to talk about where we are now and what our current challenges are around S&C in particular, and we're going to look and see what the future might look like and see how we can influence it. So what is light rail? Now, that text is very small intentionally because you can't listen and read at the same time. I've learnt that in the past. So you don't need to read that. Light rail in the UK is not a small rail. We use very heavy rails, crude rails. But light rail predominantly, if you want to take a simple answer, there's no freight. Okay, so it's an urban transport system with no freight generally. Now there's an excellent paper in the REI's, not PLI's, REI's, Knowledge Hub, written by Dr. Rob Carroll and Richard Briggs. So if you want more information on what light rail really is in detail, I'd point you in that direction. So light rail engineers talk about generations of light rail and tramway systems. So the first generation really that we talk about is between 1896 and 1950. So that's really when the Tramways Act came into being, which allowed very small railways to be built very quickly, up to the 1950s when the motor car took over really, and lots of railways were removed to the benefit of buses and cars and things like that. Second generation really is 1980 until now, and we're lucky enough now to be right at the start of the third generation, our next generation of light rail renewals and systems. So the first generation really, amazingly, we had over 400 light rail systems in the UK, and that ranged from standard gauge track, intermediate gauge track, and very narrow gauge track. Towns such as Felixstowe, Immingham, Cleethorpes, all had light rail systems, and to our great shame, only one survived through the first and second generation, and that was Blackpool. So we had a variety of gauges, not just track gauge, but size of the rail, and local blacksmiths were very busy smashing about rails and crossings and things like that. So the image on the bottom there is actually Edinburgh Tram when it was built the first time, and I've stood on that very same spot and built a piece of railway there 100 years later, and the PPE was somewhat better the second time than the first time. And the image at the top there is actually a picture taken from the National Tramway Museum of a layout produced by Edgar Allen. So our colleagues from Progress today were talking about the rich heritage of the Edgar Allen facility at Sheffield, and there's an example of some of the excellent work that they've done in the past. We are now in the second generation of light rail. As you can see there, there's a little photograph of Sheffield on the commissioning, and I take commission from this photograph because the chap in the front looking quite jaunty with his hands in his pockets is currently my client at Sheffield, a chap called Glyn. So I take £10 commission every time I can get that picture onto a presentation. He's yet to pay, but VAT will be applicable to that charge. You'll notice on the top image there as well, it's a set of points with a single tongue. So I'll talk about it a little bit later. So you heavy rail engineers will not be familiar with a single tongue turnout. And that's not being rude, it's just the way it is. So currently we have 9 light rail systems. We have a standard gauge. That's one thing we've got in common, but we have different standards. We've got different clients, we've got different engineering management systems, we've got different rail sections, we've got different embedment systems. So yes, we've got a standard gauge-ish, but they're all very different standards. And this really is a snapshot of what the UK light rail industry looks like. Now, I wanted to put a 6th box on there, because this is an S&C debate, about the number of point ends in the UK light rail market. It is incredibly hard to find, and even ChatGPT didn't know the answer. So we've got lots, and that's a combination of embedded systems, so in the street, and ballasted systems. And today I will talk about really embedded in-track systems rather than the ballasted stuff. So then the third generation, and we're on the cusp of this really now, the next generation are new networks that are proposed. So Cardiff Crossrail is a small section of light rail system that's going to be installed, hopefully. There's lots of talk about Leeds Bradford. That was on an accelerated programme, but has been pushed down into the weeds a little bit there. But lots and lots of systems that are in the UK today looking to extend. Manchester, for example, is looking to extend Stockport. West Midlands light rail system is looking to expand to the sports quarter. So it's a busy, busy, busy market at the minute. And given the challenges in the heavy rail sector at the minute for work, there's light at the end of the light rail tunnel, if you excuse the pun. So we've got a meeting today and a seminar today to talk about S&C in particular. So first generation S&C really was a bit of a Heath Robinson affair, to be fair. And lots and lots of tie bars, lots of different gauge systems, lots of different methods of trying to get things to work. The image at the top there is an extract from Cloverleaf Junction, which was in Manchester. Very, very complicated. Lots and lots of very tight radius curves, and we can talk about rates of change of cant efficiency on a 19-metre radius curve, if you like. I've got all day to talk about that. But it's very, very, very Heath Robinson. Heath and Tramway Museum has got a section of rail in there that you'd be very welcome to go and see, which was removed from track at Old Trafford because it was life expired in 1925. And it's still in use at Heaton Park Tramway Museum, and there's a single-tongue set of switches there. And those people who don't know what a single-tongue switch is, it's basically one switch rail. Opposite that is a small V, which is cast manganese. So there's one movable switch rather than a pair. This next picture there really is a piece of railway which is in Norwich, an Egg Island crossing there, which you can see was cast manganese. And a set of double tongue points. That was an innovation, in the early 1900s. Having two sets of points on a single turnout was a real piece of engineering innovation. Second generation S&C, now we moved on a little bit, and it was interesting to hear about crossings being made from blocks of steel. Well, in the light rail industry, we would be making crossings from blocks of steel for quite a long time. So if you want any advice, Mr. Network Rail, there's plenty of people in Europe who know all about this kind of stuff. But of course, the benefit that we have for a small piece of steel is the fact that we've got very, very, very large radiuses. So, very small radiuses. Turnouts are generally measured in metres of centerline radius, so 30 metre, 40 metre and 50 metre centerline radius turnouts. Extremely small, 15 metres long. So the crossings are very small, so you can machine those out of one piece of steel. The image there on the right-hand side shows a complex piece of steel milled from one billet for some crossings in Luxembourg. So this is where we are now. We've been doing this for a while. It's not exciting anymore. We do it all the time. Adjustable check rails are an issue for us because in on-street running, trying to move things around in a highway can be quite a challenge. And Omar's in the room today. We've managed to install some adjustable check rails from Croydon eventually. And they're hopefully going to benefit by offering longevity to the crossing nodes in the future. Something that our heavy rail colleagues don't really get involved with is rail embedment. So when we're building tramways and light rail systems in a highway environment or in a pedestrian environment, the rails that we use tend to be groove rails, and they need to be coated. And for a number of reasons. Vibration mitigation is very important, noise mitigation is very important, but also stray current. The traction systems tend to be DC, and the stray current really does like to try and return to the substation via the easiest means possible, which tends to be cast water pipes, bridges, structures, buildings, and the utilities companies take great delight in claiming compensation from tramway operators for erosion of their equipment. So the rails need to be coated, need to be insulated from the stray current, and there are various methods of doing that. We can put a rubber boot round the rail at manufacture, or we can pre-coat that rail in a factory under factory conditions, or we can pour that material around the rail once it's installed. But it's extremely important that the quality of that is correct. If anybody was to go and look at Sheffield in certain parts, Hillsborough Corner in particular, you'll notice that the rail embedment is coming away, it's delaminating. And that's because it was installed when it was damp perhaps, or the quality control wasn't quite as good as it ought to be. So that's where we are now. We're trying to move that forward a little bit to try and protect the S&C that we're installing. And you can see by these pictures that a modern day site now, so we're in the second and third generation of renewals of the second generation tramways, looks very, very similar to a renewal site or an installation site back from 1910, 1913, 1896. Lots of tie bars, lots of wet trades, lots of paving, lots of disruption, not very repeatable. Things take a long time to build. You're depending on people turning up in the right mood. You're looking at tie bars, you're looking at drilling holes in slabs and things like that. It's a very, very time-consuming and difficult process, and it's not repeatable. So that's where we are now. The third generation, or the next generation of evolution of S&C, really needs to be modular. Anything that we can do away from site to ensure quality of S&C needs to be done away from site. Factory conditions. I was lucky enough to be invited to a factory in Luxembourg, and that factory that manufactured S&C was constantly air-conditioned to 27 degrees Celsius throughout the year. So every single rail that was cut in that factory was in a neutral state of stress. They knew everything about it. Now, it's great us building a tramway system in Sheffield on a wet Tuesday night, but if we'd actually cut those rails and pre-curved these rails and made this S&C in a factory condition where we knew everything was controlled, the on-site quality and longevity of those pieces of equipment must be much better. We are developing a plug-and-play track form, and I think that's the process for it. Unfortunately, it's not sponsored by Lego, but I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate a contract eventually. And that plug-and-play track form really allows us to minimise disruption, which means that the passengers that we are here to serve have access to their railway and their light rail system for much longer, which means they can get from their home to their place of work, or their home to their leisure activity, or their home to the hospital reliably, safely, and at good value. Our current systems don't allow us to do that. Those of you who live in Manchester, I can only apologise for the disruption over the August period. We had Manchester City Centre dug up for an S&C renewal for the best part of 6 weeks, and that was incredibly disruptive. There was a lot of work there, and the numbers have shown that for every week you stop people using a tramway system, it takes 7 weeks for them to get back onto that tram network. Masses of lost revenue. And you know what? If it's more comfortable to sit in the car, you're drier, you're more comfortable, you've got your podcast, you're probably not going to go back onto a tramway system. So we need to look at systems engineering proposals for our S&C that allow us to do this work in the shortest amount of time possible, which means pre-building things in factory conditions. So precast slabs are the way forward. This layout you can see on the screen there, this is a double junction that was installed in Krakow in Poland. There are 103 slabs. This actually formed part of a delta junction, so 3 double junctions back together. Biggest slab was 23 tons. The slabs were laid down. Grout was poured underneath the slab to make sure that the slabs are level and secure, and then the rails were dropped in there, and then a material called Seeker Icosit was poured around it, which bonded the rails to the slab. It ensured they were insulated from electrical issues and noise mitigation, things like that. 3 double junctions and 240 metres of plain line track renewal in the city centre took a month with these slabs. Now, the programme would have been, for that kind of volume of work and service diversion, things like that, would have been maybe 13, 14 weeks in the past. So the effort in trying to get these S&C units precast paid dividends on site, and you're very welcome to go and have a look. I can organise a trip for you if you'd like. This next piece of work here, so The new extensions to Cardiff, for example, or Edinburgh or West Midlands, are going to benefit now, really, from modular systems. We need to push this. It's a huge advantage for us to increase the quality of our S&C. As you can see there, it's quite a large crane to install these slabs, but all those slabs there you can see on the screen were installed in 16 hours. That's a very complicated piece of S&C to be installed in 16 hours at minus 15 degrees Celsius, by the way. That would not happen in the UK. We can't pour concrete when it's cold. We can't pour grouts and all that kind of good stuff. So this design opportunity we've got now in our third generation of S&C installation, we've got a real opportunity then to plan for future renewals, because it's okay building it, and that's great. I've renewed Manchester city centre twice in 13 years. Rails wear out, physics works, and the rate of degradation on a light rail is about 0.8 millimetres a year on a tight radius curve. You soon get to that 14 millimetre maintenance limit very, very quickly. So let's accept that rails do wear out in S&C. Let's accept that we need to think about how renewing them, because we will need to renew them, and that's a fact. So there's the evolution of light rail S&C. When we visited Warsaw, we were very lucky to be taken around the new depot that the Polish had built. And it was absolutely amazing. It was all slab track. They had the ability to store 147 light rail vehicles in an air-conditioned undercover storage facility. One man controlled the depot. Their biggest threat was the fact that they had so many trams, it took the drivers a long time to find the tram they were in. And we walked around this depot, absolutely agog. It was superb. And when we questioned the general manager about this, he just said one question. He said, well, I don't know why you're so impressed. You English used to be quite good at this kind of thing. And there's maybe a poignant question there. And on that, really, I just wanted to thank Voslo for some images that I managed to steal with pride. There's an advert there for the National Tramway Museum at Crouch. For those people interested in all things like rail, there's a superb facility at Crouch to go and look round. It's a cracking day out for all the family. And there's some images there from a company called Contract in Poland, who really, really are at the forefront of S&C design in the light rail industry. And that's not just from rails, but also from precast slabs, from noise attenuation, from vibration mitigation, and all the things that are very important in an urban setting. So that's me. Thank you very much for listening and for your attention. Any questions, send a TQ. Thank you.